It's a fair number, and I can't see that Sabir's just joined. So, no, he hasn't joined just yet. So, but we'll kick off in the interest of time, if that's okay. Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Sabir's here as well. Brilliant. My name is Mohammed Nakvi, and I'm a GP in Newham. And we're presenting today on CQC inspection. Today is part two. That promised part two from our last meeting in this CQC series, with emphasis on the new CQC single assessment framework. So welcome to you all. We have an hour or so do settle in. Overwhelmed again with how many have joined, and thank you. Please do introduce yourself when speaking. Parts of the presentation today are more interactive. When not speaking, please do mute. We are expecting a few more to join. Questions in the chat bar, that will be absolutely fine, and we'll endeavour to answer as many as possible. If you do want to share insights of a recent inspection in the Q&A session, please do. We're here to learn together. If I could introduce Dr. Sabir Sen. Sabir, give us a wave. My friend and GP partner at Abbey Road in Newham. Now, I don't work for CQC, and I said this at the last meeting, but my colleague Sabir has and does, and is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to CQC, and he is kindly supporting us today. I do always ask this when I present on the topic of CQC, if there is anybody from the CQC inspection team, if you're happy to do so, please do introduce yourself in the chat bar with your role. Okay. Okay, that should have flicked over to the next slide. So the aims and objectives for this session are to recap what we learnt last time, get the latest updates about the CQC single assessment, and we can get interactive and do some question and answer. And I know colleagues really were keen on that after the feedback from the last session. I'm sure we do have some experts here on the call, those that have been recently inspected. You can keep us all on track and help with some of the answering the questions that we are trying to learn all of this and get through all of this together. That should be our monitoring approach slides. So yeah, I'm just checking about the slides, because when you've got MS Teams on and you've got presenter mode for PowerPoint, it can get a little bit loopy. So if I'm talking off the wrong slide, please do let me know. So you will remember this regime approach map, maybe from the CQC website and or our part one session. Here it says how the CQC is adapting its approach to monitoring, and this is largely what is happening currently. You can see this journey for all of us in terms of inspection, and our understanding is that this is being followed monthly. And I'll refer to emails quite regularly through the session, because you should be receiving monitoring emails on a monthly basis. This box here, hopefully the pointers highlighting that box is an important one. Now, I read through a few of the latest reports and also reflected on the CQC website documents and videos. My list of things that the CQC review monthly goes something like this, and this is not an absolute list. Later we can discuss whether there is such a thing as an absolute list, but things like whistleblowing to the CQC is an important one. Patient surveys like the GPPS, audit activity, open breaches, registered manager in place or not, time since last inspection, safeguarding concerns, prescribing outcomes, clinical indoor outcomes. These are the kind of things that CQC in the background are looking at from a practice perspective on a monthly basis. And then what we receive then is that monthly email to say how we're kind of driving when it comes to and whether there's going to be any more action. And then depending on what the CQC find, you kind of move along this flow map into high risk, medium risk, and low risk. We don't want to be in high risk because we're all doing all of our stuff really well. We want to be in low risk and just get that nice monthly email that comes in the second week of the month and then crack on with work. If we do find ourselves in that medium risk kind of situation based on some of those indicators that I've talked about, there is then further monitoring activity. And then if we do find ourselves in high risk CQC, then move into a different kind of monitoring kind of situation and inspection. And that's pretty clear, and that's what's happening now, and that's what's been happening during COVID. Going forward, the new approach will be a development of this, I'm sure, and we'll get to quiz Sabir later on about this more. But I think it's important for us to understand this diagram and understand what CQC are looking for. Okay, so just a bit more of a recap on what we touched on last time. We talked about the new single assessment framework and how it is going to be for all providers, just not primary care. And I'm really happy that we've got colleagues from further field and primary care on the call, which is great. The regime is going to be followed is that single assessment framework. Important to note, the regulations and the 5 domains are not changing. 5 domains, aka the questions: you're safe, caring, responsive, effective, well-led. Those are your domains, your questions. Those are not changing, nor the regulations that back up that monitoring approach, and we'll talk about all of that. However, the key lines of inquiry we talked about last time are being replaced by quality statements, and we talk more about the quality statements in a bit. When I first thought this, I thought, oh no, that's going to be a problem, because we kind of link all the work that we do to key lines of inquiry over the years, and things are changing, and it's going to be a lot of work for us to reorganize that. But we'll look at that together and try and break that all down together. And we still have time before the new approach, the new assessment approach comes in. I do think this new approach, it's much more fluid. It's not like an inspection at this point and then another point a couple of years or 5 years down the line. It's much more of an ongoing fluid monitoring kind of situation where we are risk profiled on a monthly basis, and then we enter into the various inspection kind of regimes. Evidence is going to be important. The CQC look at evidence in certain categories, and these have been identified. This list of 6 here have been identified as the ones that CQC are focusing on. So people's experiences, feedback from staff and leaders, feedback from partners, observations of care, process and outcomes of care, and outcomes. And we'll talk more about this in a second. And of course, we said last time that the categories will be scores. So safe, caring, responsive, effective, well-led, that will all be scored. Okay, let's get to the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on the regulations. Now, you don't need to, I've put this in for completeness. These are kind of the regulations that we look at, and it's these regulations that make up the background of that monitoring approach, and then everything kind of falls. And I'll show you why these are important. Let's pull this up. I'm also going to just pop something in the chat bar as well, which is a useful link, and it's on the hints and tips, which kind of puts things together, and we'll talk about that as well. There's the 2008 Act, Health and Social Care Act, and the regulations from 2014. That's about 2/3 of them. The next ones, the regulations from 2009, and again, all of these regulations make up the background of CQC's approach to inspection. Okay, I find this screen grab really, really helpful, and I hope you do too, because what this is showing us is our 5 questions, our 5 domains: safe, effective, caring, responsive, well-led, and each of these is a we statement. So there's a we statement. We talked about we statements and the move away from key lines inquiry. These are your we statements. So I'm just highlighting this learning culture one because we'll zoom into that one in a bit more depth and try and understand how we can put stuff together for that. So key lines of inquiry, moving on, we statements, I statements coming in. And this is a decent screen grab, which kind of breaks down where these we statements fit in that whole kind of evidence gathering kind of situation and the inspection. Let's get to the next slide. Aha, we statements. Okay, so quality statements, these are replacing close, like I said. I statements look at services and care from the eyes of the patient. We statements look at services, care and governance from a provider perspective, and they're pitched at good. Okay, so I did say keep an eye out for that point around that we statement that I highlighted in the slide before, where we picked on learning culture. This is actually the we statement that sits under in that safe domain for learning culture. We have a proactive and positive culture of safely based on openness and honesty, in which concerns about safety are listened to, safety events are investigated and reported thoroughly, and lessons are learned to continually identify and embed good practices. It's quite wordy. It's quite a wordy we statement. Under all the domains, you'll see we statements like this, and this is the statement that our evidence needs to be set up to be presented to CQC for inspection purposes. With each we statement, you can see here there's related regulations. So for this we statement, these are the 4 regulations, and in the chat bar I've put that link. That is a really, really useful link, because what that does, it breaks down the domains: safe, caring, responsive, effective and well led, with the we statements and the regulations that go with each of the we statements. What we found helpful our practice, and we've only just starting doing this, is to break down these we statements further. So we'll get together in a huddle or a meeting and, okay, this is the quality statement for learning culture that CQC will be looking at when they come. These are the regulations. What do we have in our armory? What have we already prepared? What are we doing that's really, really good that we can evidence against this we statement? So if you think about acting on complaints, we thought that our complaints procedure, that would be really, really relevant. How we immediately respond, the time frame to response, how we record that complaint, how we discuss that in a meeting, relevant meeting minutes, etc., of course confidential, how we learn the themes, etc., and stuff like that. So you can see the work that will have to go to populating these we statements. It will take time, but we have all of this stuff already in our armory. We all have complaints policies, or should. So I don't want anybody to feel sort of worried or concerned that this is anything new. We have all of this stuff. just needs to be presented in a different way. And I think that, you know, this is an evolving kind of situation. The portal that will be uploading this kind of stuff, from my understanding, Sabir, is still not ready. Once that becomes ready, we'll be able to upload evidence over a period of time to satisfy the inspection process. And all of these things and these regulations are super relevant to good patient care, and it's absolutely this link in the chat bar acts as a really good aid and memoir as to the kind of things that we have to have in place in terms of policies and stuff like this. Okay, let's get to the next slide. Okay, remember I told you it's going to be scored, right? So we said that at the last meeting. We're saying this again. If you have a look at this scorecard, you can see that we statement's popped up again here, the learning culture one, relating to the regulations we just talked about, and it's been scored here. The next one in line for the safe domain was safe systems. Again, and this is how CQC are moving to make things much more structured, much more objective, and, you know, will, you know, kind of provide that fluid to the inspection. So, you know, if you've scored a 2, you upload more evidence, your score will improve. That's the fluidity of the inspection. That's the objectivity. And I think, you know, these kind of scorecards will act as a really good aid and memoir to make sure that we've covered everything and identify any gaps that we need to work on.
Why you are so late?
If you're not speaking, please, can you go on mute, please? Thank you. Okay, next slide. All the slides will be shared, by the way. Don't worry about that, and so will the video. So it's important to know where all of this change to the new single assessment framework fits in a timeline. CQC had originally said it would introduce the new single assessment framework for providers in January 2023. However, in December 22, it announced that this would not happen until later in 2023. We talked last time about this being later on in the year. Over the coming months, what I understand, and Sabir can correct me, is that we're still going to be in that kind of COVID monitoring kind of situation, and CQC are very busy, but new operational teams will begin to reach out to us, other providers, and local stakeholders about the new inspection regime. They will also roll out their new provider portal. This will be over a period of time, notifying providers individually, hopefully, that, you know, when they're able to sign up, and my understanding is there'll be plenty of guidance and support along that. But we've got a head start here in North East London because we're running these sessions, I hope. CQC will gradually start to carry out assessments towards the end of year. They're still doing lots of assessments, and then that will kind of phase into the new regime by 2024, I reckon. And my understanding is that there will be a lot more detail about what we've just been talking about, and more clarity. But actually, as it is, I think the information that out there is quite good. In terms of scores and stuff like that, so you will see on your portal pages that CQC are putting our monthly kind of scores on their last reviewed kind of. For our practice, it was May the 12th. I'm nervously waiting for the June email, and that is constantly updated on the provider portal page. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the hints and tips slide. I've put mine and Sabir's email on there. Colleagues did contact after the last meeting, and we absolutely welcome that. It's great to have a dialogue, whether it's even by email or whether it's by the phone. It's not a problem. We're all here to learn together. That's the link that I put in the chat bar, which I think is really good. and helps us to organise and prepare for the new kinds of inspection. The two sessions, so the session we did on infection protection control, part one session to the new assessment framework, and this session will be on the training web YouTube, training hub YouTube pages as well. Okay, and that's all I wanted to say. I'm conscious of time. We don't have much, but I know colleagues are keen on Q&A, and we wanted to facilitate that as well. So I'm just going to come out of the presentation, if that's okay with all of you, and then go to just move some screens around. Okay. Right, Sabir, I'm live again. Okay, hi. Okay, so I'll put up the chat and then we'll see the if there's anything. Sabir, if you could scan through the chat, and then I'll take the first hand. Let's have a look. Amina, did you want to come in?
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Good afternoon. I work for Newham Health Collaborative. I'm one of the HR officer. I would like to ask. I've read your first presentations. I didn't attend it because I wasn't aware that there was a. I missed it. I'm very sorry about that. My first insight I would like your insight in regards to documents that we've been approached by the PC and say we want the documents to be in the practices. Because it is one of the CQC requirement. So I'm a bit like, I want a bit of clarification in regards to it, because to our previous experience, as long as we ensure that we have the document, because as NHC is a hosting employer, and we reassure that the practice on a trust basis that we have all the documents, and if ever CQC require the documents, we are happy to provide the documents on request. But moving forward, which we already started it, we have a PCN portal which we have uploaded the required documents, which is such as certificates. There we do put the number of the enhanced DBS certificate. We do put different thing which we believe that CQC might want and the PCN might want to have access to it. My question will be, do you think this is sufficient to in regard to CQC inspection, because we've been having concern raised that you have to have the physical document in the practice?
Yeah, I mean, I get your question. I've emailed NHC on that. I have a perspective. Sabir may have a perspective. Let's see if we. Yeah, I think.
Do you want me to answer that?
Okay, yeah, go for it, Sabir.
The problem is that when you are delegated a responsibility to a third provider for HR, end of the day, your practice population is looked after by the people who's on the site. Every practice has the duty of care to make sure that all the documents on the site, whether it's electronic form, whether it's a physical form, but at the end of the day, we should have a copy. And when, say for example, PCN get visited or Federation get visited, they will see whether the place things are on there. But when the people are coming to the practice should have a copy, either electronic or the record form, but it must be available there. So PCN, federations and practices has to work together. So there should be multiple places this thing to be placed, because end of the day, I have delegated. I need to make sure that I recheck the people who've been employed are really compliant with all HR requirement.
I appreciate this answer, but would you be okay, like, because it is a CQC requirement and working together as partnership with the PCN, we want to have a trust basis and ensure that we meet at one end, but we've introduced a PCN portal where we're uploading the documents through there, rather emailing it to practice managers, because we had concern before emailing to practice manager. One practice manager is there, one, because it's not a generic email. Do you think it be sufficient that you are happy as practices to have it through the PCN portal, which is GP TeamNet, and we're uploading all the required documents there?
No.
So Sabir, if I couple, so we can then move on to the other question. So basically, yeah. CQC will not be able to deal with all eventualities. They deal in fact. Okay, is it blue? Is it red? Is it green? Okay, they're really in fact, and that's objective, and there is clear guidance, and we shouldn't have wavering. The standard is that that information is shared and should be available to the practices to prevent because those individuals are working in the practice, and vice versa. And remember, the new regime will be I said it's in the catch, it's in the hook, it's for all providers. Okay, so the new is the feds, the PCNs, they will all be not PCNs, the feds, the hospital, we've all got this same framework. We need to make sure when we have individuals working as part of that core kind of situation, even the extended kind of situation, that things like safeguarding training is up to date and your references are all checked. It only takes and that's in place because we know that there are instances where things can go loopy as well. And as it is, that information needs to be shared. And that's why many of the practices have pushed to the PCN managers and those who look after the R staff, if it's federation, to share that information. So I know it's more work, but I think it's also a useful question as this framework develops, as this new single assessment develops, that we should feed in and say, well, we're quite, we have confidence and trust in this kind of situation. Are you happy for it just to be X and Y? But when you come to inspection times, everything has to be completely in line. Sabir, is that okay? Okay. Gurmeet. Gurmeet?
Oh.
Hi,
Yes,
please.
can you
question.
hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to give my perspective. I am, well, a co-CD as well of the PCN, and I am the lead GP in my practice as well. I raised this question probably a year ago in the PCN. Exactly same thing, that we need to have copies in the surgery, because when the CQC inspector comes, we don't want to give them any chance to raise the query, but I'm facing resistance from my own PCN. I mean, they think that it's too much work, and the other co-CD also says that no, we'll give you a list to say that we've got everything in place, and that should be enough for the PCN, for the CQC. But when we were expecting a CQC visit and we suddenly scrambled for the paperwork, we found that the ARR staff didn't have their vaccinations up to date, and it took weeks and months to sort that out. So there is an element of trust, but then to be safe, I think we should have the paperwork in the surgery, in every surgery, in a clearly marked folder. Thank you.
Gurmeet, you make a really good supporting point. I think if we don't have records and information regarding staff that work on our sites, that will be seen as a breach. Currently, it's very clear that is a breach, and I know practices, when you read reports, have been pulled up on that as well. Sabir, I didn't want to add anything to that. What I would say is that if you want us to pick it up at the GP provider forum, the GP provider, the NEL GP provider group, that would be a good point to raise this, where PCNs are represented as well, and we can feed back to CDs. There's never going to be a limit amount of work that we have to do, unfortunately, but there's some things absolutely like ABC and 1, 2, 3 that have to be done right now. That is the clear guidance, and we don't want to breach and end up in GMC dungeon or CQC dungeon because we haven't shared sensible, appropriate information. Okay, thanks, Gurmeet. I'm going to take one from the chat bar, if that's okay. Sabir, there was a lot so the slides are being shared. The recordings are also available. Shabana, you wanted to pick up around patient threatening practices to complain to CQC for private.
It's the complaints procedure and stuff I gave to Mina in.
Come in. Shabana?
Yes, sorry, I didn't know whether I was on there. So we've been having increasing complaints where patients do threaten to go to CQC, and I just wanted to know what is the take of CQC on this when patients do go to you for complaining about such matters. Recently, as everybody is aware, there is a huge prescribing regarding ADHD and also around certain weight management things. GPs are put under pressure by patients where they go and do the first consultation privately and are seen, but these ADHD medication are attached with strict shared care guidelines involving blood test monitoring. And I think first time ever GPs coming together and saying that, look, enough is enough. We don't want to take the monitoring up, because if we are doing it in a private sort of a setting, it's not under the NHS one. And we check with medicines management, they say that it's frowned upon. The private shared guidance that private consultants do, it's frowned upon. So we want to know where does CQC stand with that?
And I just answered that question. Okay, now in the governance world, there's two questions. One is comply or explain. If you don't comply with anything demand, you need to explain why or not. If the CQC comes to your practice because of you haven't prescribed something, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely. Because what might they do? They might ask you a question. They might give you, inspector might give you a phone call to understand what exactly happening there, but that will not provoke a visit. So if this patient, if it's not comply with the NICE guideline, it's not something a common practice, you have got all reason to be said no. Because remember, if you do the wrong, you've got three regulators, NHS England, CQC and GMC. One of them will eat you. So instead of doing that, just record everything and just tell the patient what is the reason. If they wanted to have a further information, give them leaflet, do exactly reasonable adjustment you need to do. After that, I'm very unlikely for that reason somebody will visit you. That's not possible. I don't think that I haven't seen that one, but we know that people use the CQC as a scapegoat and they wanted to frighten people. But remember, we cannot live in a world of frightening each other. So please record everything, give the direction of travel another way, give the leaflet, do your job, nothing will happen. But no bad behavior, no shouting.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Sabir's thing. CQC are very keen to get the basics, practices doing the basics right, and that evidence. If you move into that situation, Shabana, and turn it into a positive maybe and say, we've had these responses and this is what we've done. We are in discussions with the CCG. We've presented it at the forum. We've presented it at a local CQC meeting. We've asked the commissioners to have a look at it for us. That's also the kind of thing that CQC, so we've turned that situation that you started off as a negative into a positive and is a star for you, that you're identifying this to the wider teams and stuff like that, but doing what Sabir says and making sure everything is documented and acted professionally and correctly.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shabana. I was going to pick up Kathleen's comment. What type of evidence documents are needed exactly for the 6 categories? So yeah, we said so in the chat bar. I've put that link, which clearly says you've got the domains, you've got the relevant WE statements under those domains and the regulations that go with those domains. The evidence that CQC collect will be in kind of that 6 kind of categories. So people's experiences. So they will be looking at your Google reviews, your friends and family tests. They'll be taking feedback from CCG, whether we've had any issues around contracts and breaches and, what's it been like to work with this practice. Feedback from other partners, local authority maybe. They'll be directly observing coming into the practice and looking at how you actually manage SAFE. What you've put on this to be portal, which isn't fully up and running or is only being piloted, what SAFE means to the practices, whether you've gone through those WE statements and have made sure that you have policies available to CQC to look at that satisfy those regulations. Kathleen, did you want to come in, or does that start to give you an idea? There's more information that's going to be flowing. It's not absolutely fantastically clear what comes in each of those 6 evidence categories. but I think you start to get the gist of the kind of thing that they're not reinventing the wheel here. They're just slightly looking at it with a different lens. Samir, is that a fair response?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell, look, nothing has changed so far. Nothing has changed. Only thing CQC is doing now is the system review. General practice no more is what we call interval based. That means 5 years you didn't have an inspection, so somebody will come. It's all risk based at the moment till 2024. Any risk there, they will probe it. But until there is nothing called frequency based, there is nothing called close monitoring. It all be done on risk based until 2024.
Brilliant, excellent. I'm just looking for any more hands up. Kathleen, do come back if that hasn't fully answered your question as well. Faria.
Hi, Sabir. I'm going to go back to the point what we were discussing about the ARR PCN staff's HR element. And what I want to ask is that our PC, I'm a PCN manager, by the way. So our employments are either done by the federation or have got PCN staffs directly from the third party providers. So they are kind of legal employers to them. Okay, so therefore, we do not receive any documentations from them, although we receive a spreadsheet which says everything, what they have completed, the date of the DBSs, all the immunization records. Is that suffice?
No.
From the third-party providers, we receive a compliance certificate which says about they have completed these things, because there is a MOU signed between them. So they are kind of liable to actually do all the recruitment checks and onboardings. So my kind of a question is, because they are legal employers, they kind of resist to share all the documents to all the practices and all the PCN. So there is a resistance, is not from the PCN as a PCN manager, but its resistance is kind of from the direct employers. So where do practices and the PCN stand in this kind of a situation?
Okay, we at the GP, we have a registered patient.
Mm-hmm.
The patient's well-being is our responsibility. Okay, you can delegate, but safety assurance is yours. So I strongly believe the practice must have a copy of this to make sure. Remember, this is the way the system fails. Somebody's thinking somebody's doing it, nobody's doing it. All these things happens, disaster in NHS is because of this kind of gap. So I strongly recommend, it doesn't matter who's doing. If my patient is looked after by somebody else, I need to have that quality assurance, and I need to have a copy so I can be cross-checked whenever it's needed. So I completely agree there is a problem with different provider, but the rules is rules. There is no bending here. I don't trust mother-in-law. I need to keep my child in a safe hand.
Superbly dramatic as ever.
I agree with your comments. Sorry, I agree with your comments, kind of. But then I think PCNs are going to, if they don't get if they are getting these resistance, then there will be probably hardly any employments happening then. Because if they're not ready to give any documents because they feel they are liable for their own staff, and the compliance certificate and the spreadsheet should be sufficed to be given to the CQC, which has happened in the past. Because even with my own experiences, we always had a spreadsheet of training logs and all those things, they were absolutely fine with it.
I know, but then as long as you are 100% sure, but as you just cross-check, I don't know what is the problem of having another document in the surgery. We have hundreds, thousands of documents.
There is a reason behind it, Subir, because first of all, these staffs are working with 14 GP practices. Okay, they are not only for one GP practice. And plus there is quite a lot of sometimes turnover as well. So practices have to do all the files and so all those stuffs, all those kind of a work which is created for the practices. And as a PCN manager, I don't have the assurity from the practices they have cleared all the files if a staff is leaving. So there's quite a lot of things which is linked, and this probably CQC needs to understand that.
But
absolutely agree.
That sounds more risky to me. So everybody's thinking somebody's checking and nobody's checking. So to be honestly, that's more where I will emphasize to see on the side, because everybody might say, oh, somebody else checked it, and end of the day nobody checked it. So remember, we're going to have a very tight system here, and I think there should be a copy in the surgery. I really, if I will ask my practice manager whether he did the same thing or not, but I will make sure I have a copy in the surgery.
Yeah, and I must say, we've even on the call and in the chat, we've got kind of a difference in perspective from the PCN. If you think about a PCN, an extended hub, you know, it might be a federation needs to know what the defib, the fire protocol is in that building that they're using. All of that needs to be with. So it's a two-way kind of thing. But as it is, I'm quite sure that if I was to email Claire or Brenda, they would be quite keen that until it's absolute clarity that these kind of documents are shared and we have sight of those documents, because we need to make sure when people are looking after patients, when people are involved in patient care, that they have gone through the necessary scrutiny. I'm just going to come to Amina.
I would like to reassure like the PCN we're working with as Federation. Samina Khan has said, like, we use GP TeamNet, and now we use GP TeamNet, and now we upload all the documents on GP TeamNet. It's on one portal. So if ever one of the staff is working different GP practices, and if they are using GP TeamNet, they will have access to all the records and all the documents. It's not just a form which NHC is doing now. It's providing the documents on an online portal, which I believe this will reassure all the PCN and all the practices, everything is there. And we're working towards making the rota in one place. And I think it's quite efficient. And then if as Newham in one community, we CQC walk in and see everybody, all the PCN is doing one system and everything is clear, I think that's a goal point for us.
I mean, it sounds really, where things can be online is good. Where things have to be paper is good as well. That's absolutely fine. You know, and there's nothing stopping us when we use TeamNet printing things off as well.
Yes.
If we want to waste trees, but you know, we don't want to do that. There was a question about DBSs on there before I bring. Actually, let me bring Gabrielle in first. Okay. Gabrielle, do you want to come in, and then I'm going to then talk about DBSs for a second.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation and Sabia's presentation. I'm really pleased about that. One comment, I think I've already told my practice manager that PCN staff working the practice, we must have their documents, you know, because this one that they said PCN don't want to release. If they can't release, I would then probably say we don't want the staff, you know, so I just want to say that. But quick, another thing else, you know, we have experienced GPs have been in the practice for years, you know, maybe at the time we didn't ask for references, you know. Do you think it's prudent for us now to at least ask for updated references, you know, some, because really I'm thinking more and more that even myself, I need reference, you know, to at least for the manager to have. So what's your view about that?
Yeah, I've got a perspective on references. Sabir, I don't know if you want to come in. Gabrielle, you know, for staff that have been working there for 2-3 decades, sometimes 4 decades, we don't have the reference and things like that. But there is nothing. So how do we get around that kind of situation where there's lots of options? Mostly, whichever option you pick, you need to think, is my inspector going to be happy with it? You can absolutely, you know, with the colleagues say, look, you know, this is part of CQC's inspection. We want to go back, and we just want to put some references in your record. They can be up to date. It can be from the appraiser. It can be from a partner. I don't think CQC, in my experience, Sabir, are going to look back and say that Dr. Gabriel's references from last month are not relevant or appropriate. He said, back in the day, we never used to do that, but we've noted that this is a requirement of CQC, and we've done the due diligence and gone back and taken references from colleagues. And also, we have Dr. X's appraisals that we've been going over since appraisals began, as it were, as well. So there's lots of ways to get around it. What you need to do is to make sure in your spreadsheet you've got all of those ticks in all of those boxes, and you've got something to back that up. That's a sensible explanation to CQC. They will pick on one file. They love picking on the files. They will also interview that staff as well. So they will cross-check whether there was an interview record kept, whether there was an X or a Y. As long as you have an explanation for all of this situation. In 2000 and we never used to do that. This is fine. But in our annual appraisal, we will, or review, we will check up on this. It's about that narrative. It's about that story. The whole point of this is to make sure the people who are looking after our patients and residents are safe, and the governance of the practice has done the due diligence around our workforce.
Thank you.
Sabir, did you have anything to add?
Gabriel, thank you. Gabriel, listen, can you remember when we started? Do we have a reference that time? Can you find out your reference? Okay. Now, I was in Redbridge yesterday visiting one practice. Same question came. Okay. There's a lot of staff working for 20 to 25 years. Okay. So to find out those kind of reference, probably look, all these practices came from a single-handed small practice and now gone bigger. Now, very difficult to find those kind of references. As Wak said, as long as they have you need to do a risk assessment on that particular person. Has this person had annual appraisal? Did you pick up anything abnormality annual appraisal? How much complaint? So you need to do those kind of risk assessment, and you have to keep that risk assessment in the record. When the inspector comes, you can say reasonably that she has started 20 years ago. That time there was no employability things we have got now, but we have her whole 5 years or 10 years of appraisal, at the same time her complaint records. So these are available. That is the way you can ensure that person is fit and purpose for the job she's doing, or he's doing, sorry.
And you know, if you have any queries and you want to test any of this out, test it amongst your PCN. The PCN came to a decision. Test it in your forum for Waltham Forest or Tower Hamlets or Noom. Test it out there. This is what the practices have decided. This is what the groups of the CDs have decided. And when there's consensus, that is really, 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 really powerful. So there was a question about DBS from Gina. Gina says, what is the actual process for a DBS check? Previously, it has been a grey area, but we can just do a statement from staff to say nothing has changed rather than do a new one every 3 years.
Nowadays, there's an electronic DBS which gives you expiry date, and you need to keep an. So there's two kinds of DBS: the ordinary DBS who are not in contact with chaperoning or looking after the children or not patient facing. So that can be done by electronic, and that will be an expiry date. The enhanced DBS is 3 to 5 years. It depends on what kind of patient contact you have. That also can be done electronically, and that also has an expiry date. I think you need to make sure that at least the DBS is done every 3 years for the people who are on the reception, and the doctors probably 5 years, but it depends on if your role changes, you need to have an enhanced DBS. So do online. Online is the best way because that will give you an alert and that will give you an expiry date.
Yeah, and there's clear guidance on DBS. I don't know if you'll use Practice Plus or Bluestream or whatever around these kind of things. Sabir's timeframes are absolutely correct. But again, with all of this, it's what your practice appetite is, your provider appetite is for risk. If you want your this electronic kind of situation, this is fantastic now. But sometimes that has also come a cropper as well, isn't it? Because Sabir, there's some providers that CQC probably wouldn't even touch. So do your due diligence. Do get an electronic provider to support you with the DBS. It makes things much easier for you. You can imagine how much time we used to spend chasing people for documents and stuff. One important thing that I read in one of the reports the other day was around DBSs. We need consent from our workforce to put their DBS, signed consent, wet ink, to putting the DBS in their file. Okay, it has personal information in, it has sensitive potentially information in, and so all you can put in there is the top bit of your DBS certificate without any else of all of that stuff where it goes into all of the detailing and things like convictions and all of that kind of stuff. You can have that whole certificate in the record if you've got consent from your staff. Very simple, very important. I saw 2 practices in 2 reports that came up a cropper because the DBS that they showed actually had a full breakdown of everything without consent from the individual. We don't want those kind of little holes for colleagues to fall down those holes. Make sure it is watertight. So remember, get consent to put the DBS in people's files, and if you are not getting consent, just put the top bit. DBS is done. Okay. Can I see any other hands up? Okay, let's go to the questions. So Tuhino asks, clinicians DBS is enhanced and non-clinicians is DBS is standard, right? So there's perspectives on this one. For me, if you have a chaperone policy and you are trained all of your staff in doing chaperone, then it's clear for me there's no grey area there. They need to have an enhanced. Sabir, is that your understanding? Yeah. So Tuhino, you'll find that for those individuals, if you've got somebody working away in one of those NHS NEL primary care cupboards that has no contact with patients or anything like that, or patient information is just, then yeah, you could probably say that's not relevant. But for those who have patient contact or who are handling patient information, of course, this is sensitive. They must have an enhanced. Sabir, is that correct? Yep.
Just mentioned here, all patient facing, even though it's telephone, needs DBS.
Sabina's asked, what if the staff doesn't give consent? Sabina, just the top bit, the certificate number and the title DBS is more than enough. And make a note that they haven't given consent for the full certificate, but we've got we've seen it and we've kept the relevant certificate number. That's that one answered. So lots of agreement around the. We've covered Sheena's question. We've covered Amina's question and Sabir's question. Right. Oh, there's another hand up here. Good, excellent. Ravali.
Hello, hi. Sorry, I just wanted to say, like, so if you don't look at the full DBS report, you just have the number and you're filing it away. If there's some significant events, issues, don't we have to deal with them to protect our patients? So you need
Ravali,
the full.
I didn't say don't look at it. I said look at it, make a note and say that you've looked at it
Okay.
and you've actioned anything that you need to action, because it's very important for the jobs that we do. And you've kept it and you've made a note in the staff file. Yeah, so we write in the staff file, is very clear, it's written in the interview, no DBS related actions, because of course we're going to do our DBSs before people start work, aren't we? Yes, we are, everybody, correct. All of it's going to be time ordered chronologically, okay? And then of course we do make a note in the staff file to say DBS concern actioned and stuff. And then there's a separate narrative that's kept confidentially around that.
Can I just check what is the difference between enhanced and normal? Because I thought like admin staff, if they're not, I thought that was okay, but what you told me is something different. So we need
this
to
is actually
change.
There's my
What's
understanding there's 3 tiers, Ravali. So the number 1 tier, so you know, for some of the registered managers on here,
yeah,
some of the people are registered managers. You know that name that gets in lights on the CQC main page, that's the super enhanced. Even the post offices don't understand. That's the one. They send you a certificate, and if you lose it, you're never going to get that back. But make sure when you get that certificate, you take a copy of the number. Okay, that is a super enhanced certificate where they even want the different side of the driving license compared to what they are. So that's one. Then you've got the enhanced check for those who are doing that patient-facing work, who are very much involved in patient care. So it could be a receptionist that acts as a chaperone, has done the training. It could be your GP, your partner, etc., and stuff like that. So those who have no link to anything like that, and there are very few roles now with things like ARS that satisfy that very basic kind of check. And with the that middle kind of tier and that super enhanced, it's very much about adding in working with young people and checking addresses in a different kind of way. So some CQC formalities, DBS formalities that are involved in the kind of checks that they do. Sabir, is that okay?
Yeah, one thing I don't understand. this patient-facing, non-patient-facing, all staff in GP practice are patient-facing. Even though your domestics who are working on the floor, they're also facing patients. So the things can go wrong anytime. So the whole point of having a DBS to make sure that you are given a job to somewhere, you can rely about the dignity, respect, and have some kind of privacy maintained. So I think in GP practices, all of the staff, until you have a chef who's cooking for you on the back, everybody's patient speaking. So I think ordinary DBS is for everyone. NS DBS, the people who have to feed the children, women, or do special procedure. Like as a CQC advisor, I have announced because I'm always with some kind of high risk situation. So it depends on that the soft or hard contact with the patient. The receptionists are the soft, and the clinicians are hard end. So DBS need to be done for everyone who is stepped into the building.
So whatever your practice risk appetite, your provider risk appetite is, have a clear guidance of how you're going to be managing DBS, super enhanced, and who fits into that kind of situation and why. As long as you are clear, you've done the due diligence around risk, you've looked at, compared that with Practice Plus, Bluestream, talk to us about it. That's absolutely fine. You can't go wrong. There's a good question from Sabina Mughal saying, staff H file, is it okay to have it all on the computer, but do we need copies? So I've heard lots of conversations. So Sabina, what people are tending to keep in hard copy are those relevant kind of bits. So the photocopy of that DBS maybe, or the personal details, etc. and stuff like that. Many practices have now started to scan in stuff from more than 5 years ago or more than 3, as long as you've got a sensible policy, there isn't a set criteria of what you keep, what you don't keep on paper and online, as long as it's easily accessible, as long as it's complete, and you've got a policy written up about staff records and stuff like that, staff files, you will be absolutely fine. I can tell you what we do here, more than 3 years, on it goes, it's scanned in and stuff like that. After that, file returned or destroyed, and we keep it the stuff that in the last 3 years and stuff like that. I'm hoping that doesn't cause us any problems. I don't believe it does. Dr. Bapu has put in the chaperones from Practice Index, which is great. Now Tuhinor says, Dr. Nak, we're not trying to be greedy over money, but we literally updated our non-collision DBS like 1 month ago, but to standard. Does that mean? Tuhinor, I would, if your reception or your what you perceive to be the DBS, the non-enhanced DBS, are in contact with patients, yes, I'm really sorry. That does need to be addressed. There was a really good question that I saw in the earlier, Sabir, about emails, the monthly emails. Why do I say that emails are important? So the question was, there's a practice manager who's looking after CQC who's not getting the monthly emails. Each provider, Sabir, as I understand, should be getting a monthly email after that due diligence, that information review is done by CQC on a monthly basis. If that isn't correct, what you need to do is to go into that practice portal and update your information to make sure that the registered manager or somebody who's looking after CQC is getting that information. It's super important. It's much better to get an email, relax yourself, and then think to the next month and pick up again for the next month, rather than get a phone call and say, we're coming today, we've already knocked on the door, or they're all, CQC are already waiting in reception. So anything to add on that? Just keeping that portal up to date. The portal is going to become very important. It's going to be all singing and dancing, apparently, with lots of space where we can add evidence and stuff like that. Hands up from, let's see who's got their hands up. Sahib Ali. We'll go on till about 13:35 if that's okay with everybody. Sahib.
Hello, thank you. Basically, thank you for the talk today. I'm a GP partner in Tower Hamlets.
Hi.
I had a very quick question. I used to be the hub clinical lead in Tower Hamlets a number of years ago. So I know the expectation was for unscheduled care doctors, you had to audit and review their GP notes, which we did, and we passed CQC. But apparently I've been led to believe that even for normal GP practices, we're expected to say review say, locum GP note, salary GP note, just to basically affirm that we're assuring of, say, quality and in terms of the robustness of the notes. Is that something which CQC expect, or is that something I've completely, say, manufactured in my mind?
Okay, so what will be happen now? When the inspector comes, they will assess your 2-hour clinical notes. Okay, and if you go to the CQC website, there is a called a good medical record keeping template, and there is about 14 criteria that you don't have to show the 14 criteria on each consultation, but each consultation should have at least 3 to 4 criteria that's been mentioned on that template. So have a look on the template, but we are expecting if you have a comprehensive visit, we'll go to 12 years medical record that will be randomly selected, and then will be assessed on how good is the medical record keeping is. So it doesn't matter which clinical setting, as long as there is a patient contact, there is a record keeping, the CQC will look for it.
But do we as partners have to say sit through locum GP notes and say,
yeah,
safeguarding domain, prescribing, safety netting, and assessment, history taking? So do we have to formally audit the notes like we do in the out-of-hours sector?
So that with any patient contact, any record keeping, it doesn't matter which setting it is, where the patient doctors are involved, notes involved, it will be reviewed. So go to the website and find out there's a template called Good Medical Record Keeping. Is there. So, but as I said, we don't ask the GP register to maintain 14 criteria on each consultation. At least each consultation to demonstrate 3 or 4 criteria mentioned on that website. We can do another session on this, on medical record keeping, in the next time, probably for 20 minutes, and I can go through that.
Sorry, my question was more on the process. So are we expected to formally review, let's say every 6 months, review 10 locum GP notes?
Yes. We have something called clinical guidance. That's the software. That software picked up randomly selected. So you can have those kinds of software. PEL does those, other people does it. So there is a lot of way can see it. But end of the day, if you're delegating a responsibility to locum, clinical risk still lies down within you. So you need to really check on and off the locum. So when there is when they say what is the quality assurance of locum, it's not the reference, it's not only the induction books, it's also how they're performing. So you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Saib, I'd agree with Shabir. So there's some things we just have to do. So for example, you know, when you have your reception team actioning your e-consultations and stuff like that, for example, or your text consultation, there has to be some check. There has to be some regular check to make sure that that is of a standard. Your frequency of check depends on the experience of the individual who's working for you. So somebody who's just a new starter, I'd probably say, they'll have a period of induction, then you'll come back and say, oh, look, we've had some of your notes and stuff. And make sure you document that in the staff file. As part of the annual review for your workforce, notes is a really, really, really important one. For locums, so a way that we find it, so we have a locum that attends regularly. We always have a buddy doctor with that locum, to help with things like referrals and stuff like that. And they will feed back around the notes. It's very, very nice I think for the locum. I think it's very, very safe way of working for the practice, as long as it's all documented and it's clear that you have a process and it is written up as part of your appraisal protocol, or your review protocol. I think it's absolutely appropriate. So the answer to your question is that yes, I do think that you should have an agreed period of time based on risk that the practices when you review a set of 10 notes maybe. And there's lots of good examples in practice CQC reports for that. And actually under SAFE, we talked about the WE statements, and a lot of the WE statements talk about this regular audit, regular check for things that we've put in place over the months and years. Does that help, Sahib?
It does. I think it's best to err on the side of caution, just do it. Basically, I think if we have it, we did it for our last inspection, but I think they saw it more as something additional, but sounds like it's more kind of expected now. So I think it's best to basically be say cautious, because I mean there's no harm in doing it because it's just adding to your in terms of your kudos, isn't it?
So here, one of the big questions that came out of our last session was around mentoring, around supervision. I've shared some templates with colleagues that emailed me directly about what we use around that. So, you know, I will meet, I didn't today, but I was supposed to, with our ANPs and go through a couple of consultations with them. You do that with your AAR staff. You know, we're making a big thing now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're saying, where are we getting the time for supervision? And keep a record of it in a spreadsheet. That's the best thing to do in action.
Normally we block off like a couple of slots for a GP to supervise a pharmacist. So it's all blocked, it's all on EMIS. So if they were to ask, show us your supervision, it's all very evident. So it's all very in terms of time protected. So we've got, it's like with my GP trainees in FY2. So there's allocated time for supervision to go through the notes, prescribing, any other issues.
Good.
So it's all very well documented. Thank you for that.
Anywhere that people need supervision and support, and there's a lot of that with ARRs, make sure it's clearly documented and make sure that the PCN managers are aware of it. You're aware, we discussed it in meetings, it's minuted and stuff like that. And, you know, it's not, you don't have to go out of your way to do anything. You are doing this regularly, it sounds like, and other practices are doing this regularly. Make sure you keep a note of it and make sure you're able to evidence it. That's it.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Amina, last question.
Quick one. I know you're running out of time.
Oh,
Just a quick one. I really need to know about the
training. We always run out of time, don't worry.
It's a very enjoyable topic anyway, CQC. In regard to the trainings, I'm having quite of a debate going on. As per to my research and knowledge, regardless what staff you are on, as long as they're working for your services, they need to ensure they do all the training, which is CQC has put in place. So I would like to know, like in regard to consultant, like who provide a service, we have a contract with us and we provide, it's not like extra, like it's not like EMIS doing a service, like we give them a contract and they're a consultant to us. What would be your advice? Do they have to do all the mandatory and statutory training, or would you say no, they are not included in it?
You're talking about all the staff working and all the trainings they have to do and they don't have to do.
All the staff, all the training, like bank staff, I'm talking about the self-employed. I ensure I give them all the training, statutory mandatory training, and they do it. There's no issue. The issue is coming under consultant, like people like who is working for us as, like, for example, clinical director, or coming to do like a year with us or 6 months with us. According to my knowledge and my research, I believe they should be doing the mandatory and statutory training, but I'm having a hiccup at the moment. Do they really need to do it, or can we?
No, they absolutely need to do it.
Even one single contact, they need it.
Thank you. I will put this presentation to my proposal and say they have to do it.
Severe, she's coming to you, knock on your door in a second.
No problem. Even one patient you talk to, you must make sure you have done it. Because even one can do disaster.
But this is really great as this is really great as it's played out, because Amina and Subir work together, and Subir is lining up a lot of stuff for Subir. But ultimately, Subir is the medical director. He's a CQC person. There is this and there's a hats.
No, I mean, it's because doctor, it's because what they're saying to him, because they're consultant, they're providing us with the services. But my concern is they're going through EMIS, if they're digital transformation, and they are doing finance, they're running through our services. You need to do the training to ensure we covered.
We need to be very transparent. We need to be absolutely, you know, if there's a fire in the building and the person doesn't know the fire protocol, they're going to get burnt. We don't want this.
Thank you.
Shabana, last one for you, Shabana.
Yes, thank you, Mohammed. Just wanted to check, you know, you mentioned something about the supervising roles, and we have pharmacists that we supervise, paramedics or GP trainees. How do you need to evidence that in an Excel sheet? From my understanding with the ARR things, and what goes back to social prescribers, because the list is amount. So could you tell us an easy way of doing this? Is it every patient needs to do documenting? On our EMIS, we do have dedicated slots so that the PCN pharmacist comes and discuss it with us. But obviously there are 3-4 patients. Then we use our EMIS messaging thing where each patient has an evidence there. But are you saying that we need to maintain a separate Excel sheet where all those patients monthly are discussed?
Not only that, Shabana, look, when I go to the practice visit, I want to see evidence to see that really supervision happens. So I asked them to code like discussion with the colleague. So when you code anything like discussion colleague or supervision done, you can do a quick search to find out what supervision said. So say, for example, you said, I spoke to Dr. Sen, he said, increase the amlodipine to 10 milligram. I want real evidence. That's plot, you have 20 minutes, you probably have it chatting about the Bollywood films. I don't want to hear that. When I come, I want to say what this you have done on 20 minutes. Did that really make any difference on the patient journey? That has really did any good to the ARR staff? I don't want to see just, oh, I got 20 minutes, but I need to know what exactly happening on that 20 minutes.
Shabana, very important. It has to be proper belt and braces. There's a policy, there's a contract with the trainee or the supervisor, the person that you are supervising and you are mentoring. There's a spreadsheet that gets kept. I'll give you an example. For the ANPs that I see, they bring one case each. We do it together. We got three ANP, we've got three nurse prescribers, and they come and bring one case. They learn. They put it on a spreadsheet. It's all there. It's documented. It's kept on TeamNet, so it's easy to evidence. If it goes back to the previous Sabi's point about how much do you need to do, you decide what your appetite is for risk based on what you see at your practice. If you think somebody needs more supervision, introduce it. That is part of your supervision and mentoring policy. If you have somebody who's very experienced, you might just do it once a year and stuff like that. But because we have all of these ARS roles that involve lots of supervision and mentoring, get a spreadsheet going, get them to sit with you every so often, a couple of times a month, and make sure they go through a couple of cases so you can tick off all these boxes in one go. I know a lot of this seems like hard work, guys. Absolutely, I do. Nobody's asking you to do it for tomorrow. I'm sorry if colleagues have inspection next week or the week after and stuff like that. You never say never. Never say never. Always be ready to pull these things out. You're not expected to have absolutely everything there at hand. You will be given some time on the day. Remember how the inspections work. You will be given some pre-warning. And I know with the inspections, what CQC are really going to be focusing now is on safe. Safe is the biggie. All the well-led, responsive, caring, audit, Mela, practice party, everything we can upload evidence. But they want to come to your practice and they want to see that you are safe. This is very important, and that's the first. If we're gonna go for something first, go for safe first. And I'll give. There's some tips we can give Sabir about safe, isn't it? Make sure all your policies are up to date. Infection protection control is important. COSH is important. Your COSH protocols is important. 50 significant event audits that you've actioned and stuff like that. Go for that one. If you want, and you've been showing themes and acting and all this stuff, it's all in there. Read some. If you read 2 or 3 reports, you'll pick up more tips as well of how to action your workflow. And then the last thing I was going to say is delegate. Be ready to delegate to colleagues. Okay, there's no way that one person can do all of this thing. Have somebody to look after prescribing. Have somebody to look after governance. Have somebody to look after infection protection control. Yeah, break it up like this. Yeah, give them all tasks. Review with them once a month those tasks. Put something organized. Risk rag rate it. That telephone system hasn't been updated. That chair in the reception room, you still haven't been to reuse to get a new one. All of these kind of things. Okay, keep it documented, and you will find that you will be really organized. And you mustn't forget to delegate out. This shouldn't be one person's responsibility. CQC, Subir and me always say, CQC is everybody's responsibility, including the patient. Subir, is there anything you wanted to add? Ladies and gents, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was useful. We will be sharing the slides again. The recording will be there. There was lots that we discussed again. We've covered infection protection control. Sabir, we've covered the new assessment framework. Let's see what the pilots show and then what CQC introduced to colleagues. And then we'll come back to you and also take your feedback about what you would like to talk about next. We are willing to help and we'll carry on this series of CQC. And Sabir, we haven't seen Brenda or Claire for a couple of meetings, so we'll try and get Brenda and Claire down as well, isn't it?
So to be honest, still it's a risk based. It's not a frequency based. It's not that you haven't got a 5 years that you have to have it done. It could be been done 3 months ago, but there's a new risk came out. So it will be a completely risk based. It's a need based. There's nothing to panic about that. Hang on. Close monitoring will be done through the different sources, patient feedbacks from the ICB. So it's a different way of finding the risk. So be assured, anything comes back, come back to us. I will put my telephone number if you want to discuss further, but we'll go through. No problem.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Sabir, are you able to stay on for a minute?
Thank you.
Somebody joining.